Hello, fifth grade. So, for our first main project we're going to be looking at perspective. Now, you remember the last few years, we've done work on something called one-point perspective. And that was mainly showing how you show distance in an artwork. If you remember, we learned about vanishing point, horizon, and just pretty much how to draw a scene so that it looks more realistic because it shows distance as things get further away. As things get further away, they get smaller. Okay? And then in fourth grade, if you remember, we did this project called Skyview Skyscrapers. And that was also using one-point perspective to show distance, but sort of in a different way. Now this year, we're going to be taking it up a notch. We're going to be looking at two-point perspective. Two-point perspective, a little more tricky, a little more rules to it, but I'm going to show you how to do it. We're going to do step by step, and I really think you guys will be able to figure it out. This is an example of two-point perspective. We have two vanishing points, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. So we're going to be designing. I'm going to task you with designing sort of like a block in a neighborhood. Okay, we're going to be drawing a couple buildings, a couple streets, and we're going to be using rulers and tools to make sure that it's drawn properly and in perspective. And if this is something that you can master, you will be an amazing artist because you'll be able to show so much if you can learn this skill. All right, so we're going to pause this for a second. I'm going to switch over to the document camera, and we're going to look at a review of our one-point perspective drawing that we did the last couple of years as a quick little refresher, and then we're going to move on to two-point perspective. All right, fifth grade. Now, before we get started, just a quick review of what you're going to need for this project. You're going to need a paper, you're going to need a pencil, and you're going to need a ruler. Pretty simple to start. Okay, we're going to first quickly review how we draw in one-point perspective. And if you remember, a couple years ago when you were in third grade, we worked on one-point perspective that looked a little bit like that. Now, we start with a vanishing point in the center of our page. Vanishing point. Through that vanishing point, we made a line. And if you remember what that line was called, it is the horizon. Remember, the horizon separates the sky from the ground. We then moved on to make either a road or a river. If you remember the way we did that, it's fairly simple. We just made a triangle that comes from the vanishing point downwards. We've got this triangle shape. If it was a road, we added lines in the middle. And remember, the further away something is, the smaller it gets. So those lines got a little bit smaller as they went back, like that. Okay, that was how we started. We looked at, if you remember, the pizza method to make foam poles or trees. And the pizza method was, we made two lines right next to each other, next to the road. We closed it off at the top and the bottom. Remember, that was the crust of the pizza. And then we measured from the bottom of the crust to the vanishing point. So see how I lined up my ruler, vanishing point to the bottom of that. And then from the top, line up the ruler to the vanishing point, like that. Remember, that was our slice of pizza here. And then we made it striped pizza. So we went to this shape. We moved our ruler over a little bit, straight up and down, made a line between those two lines. Do two. And then as we went back, we added more stripes, smaller and skinnier as they go back, like that. And then we either shaded those in, made them into foam poles. Some people made them into trees, like that. And that gives you the illusion of distance as you go back further. The building, we had a building on the side of the road. We started with a square or a rectangle. So over on the right, I'm going to make a rectangle. I started with the front. Now, you can't see through a building, so do we want to see the horizon here? No, we want to erase that. Okay. And then remember, we drew details and things on the front just to kind of show that was the front. And a couple windows in there. Just something simple just to kind of hold us over while we're practicing. Okay. Then we had to show the side of the building. And if you remember, to make the side, we want to show that it's getting smaller and smaller as you travel down the road. So we lined up our ruler from the vanishing point to the bottom of the building, just like we did the pizza method over here. We line up to the top as well, to the vanishing point right there. Connect that over. See, right now it looks like that building is going quite a ways back. So we want to close it off at some point. We want to show where the building ends. So maybe about here, I'm going to make an up and down line, close it off, and I can erase these guidelines after. You can do that in between here as well. Okay. Now, if you remember, this was a little trickier part. To show the windows on the side of the building, we had to do something. We had to make an up and down line wherever you wanted a building. So if, let's say we wanted windows there. See, I made 2 up and down lines. And then what I do is I connect the bottom to the vanishing point. I make a line. And I connect the top to the vanishing point. And I make a line just a little bit down. I'm going to do that for the top floor windows as well. Like that. Always heading to that vanishing point. Then we're just going to close it off. We're going to add up and down line, vertical line. That one needs to go a little bit further. And now we've got windows on the side. Okay, that was the basics. If you can do this, you're going to be able to do 2-point perspective. So let's move on. That was our practice. Let's grab a new piece of paper. Now, when you look at picture 2-point perspective, what do we see here? Instead of one vanishing point in the center, we have 2. We have one here and one here where the road is headed. And that's because we're looking down 2 different roads. We have 2 coming towards the viewer. We're looking forward. So we're seeing 2 sides of the buildings. We're seeing the left and the right side of these buildings here. Okay. Now we're going to look at how we break this down and actually draw it. Make it a little bit easier to understand than just looking at a finished picture. So to start, we're going to add our horizon, just like before. Add a horizon across the page, all the way across. Let me adjust the camera. There we go. Okay, now instead of one vanishing point in the middle now, we have 2 vanishing points. We have our left vanishing point, and we have our right vanishing point, like that. Now, what do I do now? Now, what I like to do is down in the middle, between those 2 vanishing points, we add stick guy. Usually, I say don't draw stick figures, this is art. But this time, you can use a stick figure, that's fine. So we've got a little stick guy here. Now, what we need to do, we need to shine a spotlight on the stick guy. Now, how do we shine a spotlight on the stick guy? We use our ruler. We line it up to our left vanishing point. And I'm going to line it up underneath him, like that. From underneath him up there. We want our first line right there. And then we're going to rotate that ruler over just a little bit above him to the vanishing point. So see how it looks like a spotlight's on him now? It's this very skinny triangle. We're going to do the same thing now, but we're going to go over to our right vanishing point. So line up our ruler right there, down below stick guy. And then we're going to move the ruler above him, and then right vanishing point, like that. So we have now what we want to be 2 roads that intersect where the stick guy is. So I'm going to add some lines in the middle just to make it a little clearer that these are 2 roads that he's in the middle of. Now we want to make our first building. The way we're going to do that is, see right above stick guy, we have this intersection. At the middle, we're going to line up our ruler up and down, going right through stick guy and above. So I'm going to make a line straight up. Okay, we've got a vertical line like that now. Okay, now here's what we need to do. We need to connect the top and the bottom of that line to both vanishing points. I will show you. We're going to go from our left vanishing point to the top of that line. So I line up my ruler, left vanishing point to the top of the line, and make a line. I'm going to do the same for the bottom. I'm going to line up my ruler to the left vanishing point and then to the bottom of the shape. So now I've got this big triangle shape here. We want to do the same thing, but this time we're on the right. So we're going to measure from the top of that shape, that line right there, over to the right vanishing point this time. And we're going to make a line straight down towards it. We're also going to connect it to the bottom over here. Okay, so we have what sort of looks like a giant diamond shape in the middle. Now, how do we make this into one of those cool buildings we saw before? Well, we need to show where it ends. Because right now, it just kind of goes way back in both directions. If you think of it sort of like a giant wall, it looks like that, going all the way back to the horizon. We're going to make a vertical line somewhere on the left, in between that triangle shape. And we're going to do the same thing over on the right. We're going to add that. Now, if you erase the horizon behind where the building is, this is going to start to become a little clearer what we're seeing. And you erase your guideline up here and over here. We now have a 3D shape, sort of a big giant 3D rectangle. Well, how do we take that rectangle and make it look like a real building? Here's what we're going to do. We're going to add some lines or dots down the middle line that we started with. Like that. Here's what we need to do. We're going to show the windows on either side of this building. We're going to go to the left. So first thing I need to do is, watch, I'm going to line up my ruler from my left vanishing point to the first dot. It's like connect the dots, 1 to 2. I connect those 2 dots and make a line like that. I want to connect the dots to the next one, so I measure from here over to the vanishing point like that. And then you're going to rotate down, always keeping one side of your ruler on that vanishing point. And you'll notice what's happening with the lines. Up here, the higher you are, the more angled the lines are going to be because they're heading towards that vanishing point. And right here, towards the horizon, it's almost straight across. Now, what happens as we get below the horizon? We go dot to dot. You're going to see the angles the opposite of up top. They're coming upwards towards the vanishing point. The beautiful thing is, if you measure these right, if you measure these right, this building's really got to look 3D. Really got to give you a nice illusion of depth. 2 more. So that's our left side. We need to now move on to the right side. We're going to do the same thing, but you guessed it, measure to the right vanishing point instead. So I line up my ruler, dot to dot. Next one, dot to dot. But each and every one, you need to make sure this ruler goes here to here. A lot of kids do this. They get one right, and then they do the same line, and they just keep moving the ruler up like that. But you can see that would be not right. If you kept following the same angle, the right side would look quite wonky. So just make sure on each of those that you measure from the dot to the dot. Like that. And I'm just going to fill in the rest of these. Okay. There we go. Last one. All right, excellent. So we have now a basic shape of a building. The thing I like to do is just kind of lightly add a little bit of shading on one side. Maybe we'll put the sun, it's kind of a sunset over here, to give it a little more depth to it. We're also later, if you have time, going to add extra detail. So if you want more detail, one cool thing you can do is just add some vertical lines straight up and down on your building to give even more detail to the windows. And this will give you sort of a big skyscraper office building style look to it. Okay. Now, we're going to be coming up with other detail too. We're going to think of what goes in the space over here, what goes in the space over here. Think of it like a neighborhood. You want to design buildings, you want to design streets and things and details. What's the weather? What vehicles are there? You could do these as train tracks. You could have cars here. You can have people, whatever your imagination can fill in there. Before I set you free to start working on this, I want you to also work on a second building. Now, how do we do a second building? We need to go down the street, either this way or this way. And we're going to it's a very similar process, but it's slightly different, so watch. So I'm going to make another up and down line. But maybe this building's a little taller, so I'm going to go a little taller like that. I still need to measure to the vanishing points. So from the bottom to the right vanishing point, from the top, it's going to be a harsher angle this time, more acute, to the vanishing point like that. That gives you a little bit of the right side. Now to do the left side, what's going to happen? It's going to go right behind that building. So watch what I do. I line up all the way over with my left vanishing point to the top. I start to make my line, but as soon as I hit this building here, I stop. I do the same thing underneath. I line up to the bottom, all the way over, vanishing point to the bottom of this line, add a line. If you do it correctly, you'll see you'll end up with a little alleyway or a nice little space in between those two buildings. The windows work exactly the same. Measure from each dot to the dot. Right side of the building goes to the right vanishing point, like so. And our left side goes to the left vanishing point, all the way over here. Measure and make your lines. Just make sure, again, each one has to go to the vanishing point. You should be measuring with your ruler each one. Okay, now we've got another building behind it. All right, friends, I know that seems like a lot. That's the basics of two-point perspective. If you have any questions, please email me and I will get back to you and I will help you out. All right, friends, happy drawing.